Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 15th edition of the Jaipur Literature Festival, protected by Dettol, Banega Swasth India at the Jan Mikulski Foundation, Bethak. We are delighted to introduce our next session, The Great Extinctions, The Urgency of Borrowed Time, and the session is presented by Sakal Media. The Earth has witnessed 5 major mass extinction events over the last 500 million years, responsible for the erasure of nearly 3/4 of its species each time. Life on Earth has witnessed cataclysmic upheaval and existential threat in the planet's long geological history, forced to recover, align, and build anew. Our speaker explores the fate of dinosaurs and species sealed by extinction events, fossil records, tectonic transformations, and the role of humankind in the surging climate crisis. If extinction is certain in time, how will modernity negotiate all that is left? Mr. Pranay Lal is a biochemist who works for a non-profit organization on public health. He has been a caricaturist for newspapers, an animator for an advertising agency, and an environmental campaigner. His first book, Indica, A Deep Natural History of the Indian Subcontinent, won the Best Nonfiction Debut Award at the Tata Lit Fest in 2017, among others. His most recent book, Invisible Empire, The Natural History of Viruses, was released in November 2021. May we please welcome the speaker on stage.
Is this good? Is this good? Yeah? Okay, great. Thank you so much. I've got 30 minutes, and I've been told to finish my talk in 20 so that we can spare 10 minutes for questions from you. I'm going to be very not good. Okay, it's got to be closer. Is this good? Okay. So I'm going to try telling you about what we know about extinctions and where we are in terms of the tempo at which extinctions are taking place now. There is a large amount of misinformation and misconception about the whole concept of extinction. So I'm going to tell you from various perspectives of what really is extinction and why we need to be concerned, if at all. So I think in the introduction it was made very clear we've had 5 major episodes of extinctions. In each of those, we've lost about 75% of all species that existed at that time. There was one extinction that happened between 252 to 250 million years ago called the Permian Extinction. And at that time, 95% of all species that existed got extinct. Okay? And that was both in the marine environments as well as on land. So the time when the dinosaurs got extinct, that is 66 million years ago, there was sufficient life, marine life, that survived. It was only the marine reptiles and a few classes of fish and amphibians and others that died out in the seas. The dinosaurs and anything above the weight of 60 kilos died. So anything under 60 kilos, by and large, survived. Okay? So I've just told you the 5 big episodes in which extinctions happen. Now, extinctions are a very natural process. Okay? It is happening in the background as we speak, and it's happening largely in species that we have not even identified yet. So the natural question that I expect you to ask me is that how do you know that creatures that we don't know are getting extinct? Right? So that's a question that you can ask me later, only if there is sufficient time, only if I allow you to have that time. Right? So I hope somebody can catch me and ask me that question later. The point that I want to make here is that there is extinction happening in some corner of the world at a very small scale, whether it's a single pond where there's a single kind of a creature that lives and it's dying without our knowledge, or there is a mass extinction that is happening for a creature, a life form, a species that is very well known, but its numbers are decreasing. For example, we've seen a massive decline in the populations of monarch butterflies, right? We used to have millions and millions of monarch butterflies leaving Mexico and coming to South Central America, where they would find refuge, they would breed and come back to Mexico in the summers, in the winters. But the numbers have dwindled. They are now in a couple of 100,000s. That's it. And the numbers are declining. Why are they declining? There are different theories for it, and I'm not going to delve onto it. The point that I think we must register, the first point is, extinction is a natural process. We may not be able to stop it, avert it, or even know about it because we don't know the number of species, we don't know the interlinkages between species, and we do not have an understanding of what different species do within a larger ecosystem, right? So it is natural for extinction to happen at the species level. But the problem that the 5 great extinctions that happened was because of massive tectonic events or astronomical events, right? Asteroids striking the Earth, killing all the dinosaurs, right? But there are also things like volcanic events. The other 4 extinctions are largely because of something that happened in terms of tectonic movement. It was largely geological, okay? So the 6th extinction, the one that we are talking about now, is something that has been conspired by a species. The previous extinctions were all natural in that sense. If we do not see ourselves as a force of nature, as an agency of nature, the others are typically the ones that have been caused by something that could not have been averted. But the one we are sitting on now is something that is happening so fast, and it's largely because of an accumulation of events that have taken place over the past 100,000 years since we started to work and rework the Earth, or since the time we migrated out of Africa. We started to colonize new places. We started to manipulate the ecosystems in which we were living. We made some megafauna, mega mammals, for example, the mammoth, or giant manatees, or other creatures. We hunted them to extinction. Those are things that happened because in the Great Ice Age, there was hunting by many of our earliest ancestors for food, and many large mammals went extinct. So that's a common thing that we know about. But since industrialization, from the period, say, 1750, the time when we imagine the industrial age has started to kick in, the time is when we started to exploit, outside of the forest, we started to exploit coal. Coal burning was an inefficient way of getting energy. And the engines that were being discovered or invented and tinkered with were very inefficient. So there was a large amount of coal that was burned in Western Europe and gradually into countries like India and China and South Africa and other places. So the point that I'm making here is that the use of carbon and the discovery of a new source of energy became that point in history where we started to exploit and add more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But that is something that we could reverse. The problems that started in 1750 to about World War I was a period which did not have such a significant influence in terms of adding carbon dioxide because the Earth itself had processes to accumulate that carbon dioxide, the excess carbon dioxide that was being added, right? And that was being mitigated by our forests, our oceans, our seas, and everything else that the nature does, right? Now, I don't know how many of you have read my 2 books. Can I have a show of hand? Who's read Indica? 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. 4, 5, okay. I want to tell you a story. The biggest source of carbon burial. So, okay, hear this out. We take coal and petrol from the depths of the ocean, and we take it out and release it in the atmosphere. That's causing the warming, right? We capture the carbon and put it on the surface in the form of trees and plants and grasses, and we expect that that carbon will stay buried. It does not, because it catches fire. All these wildfires that are happening in Australia, in Russia, in India, in Chile, and all these places, right? So the carbon dioxide goes back into the air very quickly. Remember the great extinction that I told you about in 250 million years ago when 95% of all creatures died? That is the time when all the coal was made. And that is when all the carbon was buried. All the coal that is there in Satpura or Raniganj and Jharia and all those places from where we get our energy now was made 250 million years ago. But we burn it like this, right? And it gets released in the atmosphere, warming the atmosphere, but we don't capture it and put it back from where we got it. So the challenge for humanity is, how do you pack it back? And we don't do it. That's one thing that no policymaker is going to tell you. That's the big mistake that we are making, okay? Now, the real reason why I'm telling you this is, when I asked you for a raise of hand, how many of you read my book, Indica, is because you need to understand that nature by itself, whether it's life forms like microbes or plants and grasses or whatever, bury carbon, but the real burial of carbon also happens because of certain geological processes. And one of them is the Ganga. And trust me, I'm not saying it because of mythological or religious reasons. Ganga is the most efficient carbon barrier which happens on a daily basis. And I urge you to read that process of why Ganga buries carbon better than any other river. Indus used to do it, but the flow of Indus has decreased. Brahmaputra, sadly, does not flow through rocks that capture that carbon. It's only the Ganga that does it among all the Himalayan rivers. So that's unique about Ganga. I pray to you that please, even if you want to go to LibGen and download the book, please do it. But please read why Ganga is important. We have to stop the acidification of Ganga because that is burying 24% of all the carbon that we emit today. Okay? So that's the first point. The second point that comes in my second book, which is Invisible Empire. I'm doing a hard sell, but there's a reason why I'm telling you this. Because our policy making, globally and in India, is pathetic. The reason why I'm saying this is, no, I think we should be, actually, thanks. But the point I'm making here is that, as we speak, every second, 10 to the power 27 viral infections are happening in the ocean. Now, why is that important? Because it buries carbon. When the viruses kill bacteria on the top, photosynthetic bacteria that are on top of lakes, seas, and oceans, they bury the bacteria that have actually captured the carbon dioxide. It goes deep into the ocean. This is exactly what I was talking about, coal and petrol. The deep burial is important. Next time a policymaker tells you that hum carbon capture kar rahe hain, we are planting trees to capture carbon, he's lying on your face. Whether it is a corporation, whether it is a government official, tell him it is greenwash because you need to put that carbon back into deep earth. Till it is not put into deep earth, we are in trouble. Now that's the climate story. The second story that I want to tell you is genes. Okay? If I were to get 50 chimpanzees from 50 different zoos from around the world, or if I were in Africa, or in a forest in Africa, and I was looking at a troop of 50 chimpanzees, chances are that the genetic diversity of the chimpanzees is more than all humans put together across the world. Just those 50 chimpanzees are more genetically distinct than you, me, and a person in Helsinki, a person in Nigeria, a person in Australia, whoever it is. We are so monocultured as a species that we have made our genetic propensity to survive any attack, like a viral attack just now that we are facing, and our threat from the microbial world, and also things that can go wrong in terms of autoimmune diseases, our own bodies creating a protein that kills us, and it's possible, right? It has happened in many creatures. Koalas, for example, are getting extinct because of an autoimmune disease that has been created for them. It's not because of climate change or anything. Koalas in Australia are at the brink of extinction. They've got enough forests, they've got everything, but yet they are dying, okay? So what I'm trying to say is, we are facing a calamity in terms of the genetic problems that we may acquire because we have very little diversity among ourselves. That's the second proposition that I'm making. The third proposition is perhaps the most pervasive, and it is something that no policymaker will tell you, okay? And this is, remember when I told you about industrial revolution producing all the carbon dioxide, and I said it's not a problem because you can fix that carbon. The real problem is that every year we release 11,000 chemicals, new chemicals that nature does not know how to digest, assimilate, ferment, break down. Okay, they include radionucleotides, they include synthetic chemicals, antibiotic, pesticides, fertilizers, everything. Even the dyes in your clothes. My clothes also. Sorry if I'm pointing a finger at you. My clothes as well. The shaving cream I used this morning, everything. The microbes don't know how to digest it. It's accumulating somewhere. Whether it's accumulating in our food, whether it's accumulating in the bottom of oceans and does not come to us, but it's killing something there. This accumulation is a very dangerous proposition because it stops further evolution of communities, of microbes. And eventually what's going to happen is that as the flow of energy, living energy, from one microbe to another gets broken, there are going to be several extinctions, first at the species level, then the community level, then the ecology, the ecosystem level. And this build-up is being seen in the middle of the oceans where we are seeing plastic being dumped in the middle of the oceans. It's coming there naturally because of the flow of currents. And you're seeing large mammals, you're seeing small invertebrates that are now going missing. And the numbers are huge. So my third proposition is, which is irreversible, is the fact that we are making synthetic chemicals whose environmental fate is not known. Right? Now, as a result of this, we may therefore be tampering with the evolutionary process in a far greater, a more pernicious way than we ever imagined. Okay? So the threats are threefold. Climate change, I think you know the story. Third, genetics, which nobody will tell you. I told you the story. We are genetically not so diverse as we should have been. Okay? It's not in our hands, but it's something that we played with, right? The way we bred and inbred into society over and over again has created very little genetic diversity. That's how we are, right? And the third thing is the threat of chemicals, which is building up day in and day out. We've got 12 million chemical entities which are not known to nature, starting from radionucleotides. Think about all the nuclear tests that we've done. Where does the persistent radioactivity go? I noticed that we've got 5 minutes, your 5 minutes for 5 questions. Please do not preface with a long thing. If your question is more than 15 words, I'm going to stop you and not take a question. Okay, question.
So do we know our oceans well enough?
Do we know?
Our oceans well enough?
Not at all. We know nothing about our oceans. I said about carbon capture in the oceans. Do you know the biggest carbon capture and the most prolific oxygen producer in the world is something called Prochlorococcus. It was discovered in 1998. It's till 2014, we had not even mapped the variety of the single largest oxygen producer in the world. If you were to, okay, I'm going to say something very controversial, but mind it, I'm saying it back to science. If you were to cut down all the large forests of the world, but keep the oceans intact, you and I will survive. Okay? That's because oxygen and the carbon burial happens greatest in the oceans, not in the forest. But the politicians will tell us, jungle bachao, ye karo. It's great to bachao the jungle. I'm not saying do not bachao it, but also save the ocean because that's where the dumping is happening. Great question. Thank you. Next question. Great. Question.
So what can we do as common citizens to prevent such a calamity?
Great question. Stop consumption. Stop everybody around you from consuming that next iPhone. If you can not take the iPhone, delay it. If it's working, do not consume as much as you do. 3 things are very important. The biggest emitters of chemicals and carbon are war, defense industry, fashion, and food. Okay? It's not automobile. You know, what policymakers try telling you is, the problem is you. You know, you are the guys who are consuming it. You are the greedy ones, so we make it for you. You know, the market is all good. You know, they try modifying your behavior. Tobacco is not bad. You are the one who's asking for it. You should smoke. You should spit out in the corner. That's the argument that they give you, right? We don't want to ban tobacco. They don't have an idea. The same thing is with nuclear. The same thing is with coal. The same thing is with, the fact that solar cells were first patented in 1928, it has taken us nearly 100 years to get it out to the market, right? The same thing is with EV, electric cells. Okay, I'm not going to digress. You've got 2.5 minutes more. We take 2 more questions. No, there's a gentleman there. Sorry, I'll just take him. Yeah. Question, quick.
That are more important to us, like, is it correct to, like, we have keystone species, so is it correct to prioritize their conservation over other animals just because it suits us and our survival?
Great question. You know that metric keeps changing by the decade. What was thought to be important 10 years ago may not be. I mean, there might be some other species that has been discovered, which is absolutely crucial. What we end up saving are charismatic species, elephants, tigers. I've got nothing against elephants and tigers. I love them. And they are very good because you end up protecting the entire forest. But you know what people end up doing, policymakers? They will make you barter. They will make you, they'll say, I'm giving you a tiger reserve here, but please give me Andamans. And that's what is happening, right? So this is where the exchange is something that we should not be willing to trade, So keystone species are good, but make sure that you understand the entire ecosystem and the landscape and the ores and the minerals that go along with it, that make that keystone species possible, make it keystone in the first place. Question there, there's a gentleman there. Yes, please go ahead. Question. Speak up, you can speak up.
Yeah, thank you very much. It is very informative, basically.
Your question.
As per the species, it is a natural changes of the species with times. And some species will be change their forms with the times and by regions. And this extension of the species in the 5 phases from the evolution, from the Proterozoic.
Yeah, what is your question?
From the Proterozoic to the Jurassic
Yes.
and to Ice
Yes.
Age, and basically. And can you change basically what are the dynamics of the earth can change the extinction of this species?
No, you cannot, because the tempo of extinction or survival of species does not depend on how we modulate it. Remember that fish, sharks, crocodiles have been more successful in averting extinctions. They've survived better. These creatures, unlike mammals, are much more durable. Mammals have a lifespan or a tenure of only 1 million years. But certain fish have survived 225 million years. Crocodiles have survived 220 million years, in some form or the other. We've been on Earth for about 1 or slightly less than 1 million years, our ancestor and us. And, our time might be now, because the greatest survival that we've seen, the mean survival rate for any mammal species is about 1 million years. So we might be close to it, and who would be blamed? It would be the first time that a species has caused its own extinction. It's not a natural, geological, or a cosmological event that caused the extinction. We are our own biggest enemies. And until we don't change our ways, this is it. This is the end, my friend, as Jim Morrison said. I think we have no time for questions. I'm going to be there. You can ask me.